Hello, all North Spencer families. This is Ben Llewellyn, principal at Lincoln Trail Elementary School, sharing a story with you today. And my story is called Out on a Limb, and this is from the book Worthy is the Child, written by Richard Polzin and published by Nite, Inc. Do you know where the first Christmas trees came from? The Christmas tree tradition began far, far away, across the ocean in a country named Germany. Deep in the dark woods of the Black Forest, there stood a stand of Christmas trees, which no man had ever seen. In the middle of this stand was a little fir tree whose only ambition in life was to become the tallest and proudest Christmas tree in the woods. The little tree was surrounded by tall, stately Christmas trees, and he was proud to be among them. What he didn't like, however, was their constant attention. In other words, they were always telling him what to do, or so he thought. I'm going to mind my own business and not be bossy, even when I'm 200 years old. Yes, indeed, that's what I'll do, he reflected. One evening, the north wind blew its cold breath upon the forest to alert all creatures of the approaching ice and snowstorms. The tall trees cautioned the little tree of the approaching ice and snow. You need to cover your roots with a blanket of leaves, little one. Otherwise, this winter could be your last. The little tree angrily brushed his limbs back and forth and replied, Winter is at least another week away, and I've got plenty of time to protect my roots. After the little tree refused their advice, the tall tree started pushing some leaves around his trunk. But the little Christmas tree was defiant and pushed the leaves away. When I need your advice, I'll ask for it. After all, I'm just as smart as you are. Okay, said the big trees, but don't say we didn't warn you, especially when all your limbs fall to the ground and the termites make quick work of your future. As night fell, the little tree was safe and warm and proud of his decision. Just wait until morning, he thought. The tall trees will see that I am right. As the night went on, the little tree started getting colder and colder. Ice started forming on his branches. In fact, his branches became so stiff with ice that he could not shake his limbs at all. It was too late now. He could not cover his roots with a soft protective layer of leaves, and by morning his roots would be frozen. When the first light of day peeped over the mountaintop, the tall Christmas trees looked down and saw that the little tree was frozen. And in that moment, there was great danger. As the sun continued to rise, the big trees moved their branches away so that the little tree could get as much sunlight as possible. They covered his roots with a thick, warm layer of leaves. But even with all their help, it still took 3 days for the little tree to thaw out. Is he going to live? They all asked. Finally, at the end of the 3rd day, the little tree was able to move his branches. However, he was very weak and too ashamed to talk to the other trees. As the days went on, the little Christmas tree started losing his branches. One by one, they fell to the ground. There was nothing he could do to stop it. By the end of winter, he had only 2 limbs left, and they were just hanging very low to the ground. He was no longer a beautiful little Christmas tree. By this time, the big trees hoped he had learned his lesson, but they waited until the little tree wanted their advice and help. Until he softened his attitude and willingly accepted the tall trees' advice, their words of wisdom would still fall on deaf limbs. The little tree finally realized that if he lost his last 2 limbs, he would surely die. The little Christmas tree was no longer a proud, defiant upstart. He swallowed his pride and asked, Please tell me what to do. I don't want to die. The tall trees lovingly bent down and showed him that they still cared. Listen very closely, they said. Every day you must lift your remaining branches up to the sun. Then dig your roots deep into the soil and drink as much water as possible. And finally, you have to stand very still in the evening so that your wounds will heal. There was no argument this time. The little tree did exactly as they said. Ever so slowly, the wounds began to heal, and new branches started popping out everywhere. The little tree was going to live. Deep in the dark woods of the Black Forest, there still remains a stand of Christmas trees, which no man has ever seen. In the middle of this stand is the tallest, proudest tree of them all. However, if you look closely at this majestic fir tree, you will see the scars made by a defiant little Christmas tree. The beautiful tree wears his scars proudly because they remind him to always accept the advice of others as graciously and lovingly as it is given. It took the now stately tall Christmas tree 100 years to recover from his defiance. The next 100 years were going to be different. He would spend the rest of his life bending down and offering advice to defiant young upstarts, just as the tall trees had done for him. The lesson of the story is when you fail to learn from another's experience, you have no choice but to learn from your own mistakes. Thank you. Have a great day.